People can't stop raving about Jimi Hendrix now that he's back in the limelight. Washington State has acknowledged what music lovers understood for almost half a century. Something monumental has happened on American stages for the first time since before the COVID pandemic. It has music superstars vying for roles. In fact, one legendary figure is coming out of retirement specifically to take part. The current situation, involving Jimi Hendrix, has the internet in a frenzy. On November 27, 1945, Jimi Hendrix came into this world, on the West Coast, near Seattle. Lucille was the daughter of Al. They battled frequently and had financial problems. When Jimi was born, Lucille was barely 17 years old. In Alabama, Al served in the military. Upon requesting leave, he was denied access to his home and incarcerated for more than a month. Anarchy characterized Jimi's formative years. One or both of the parents was a heavy drinker. Uncertainty pervaded their house. He has 4 younger siblings who were removed by the state and kept in foster care. Jimi was temporarily placed in the care of a relative in California. Upon his return from the war in 1945, Al escorted Jimi back to Seattle. Lucille and Al had a divorce in 1951. Jimi and Leon, Al's younger brother, were granted custody by the court. Jimi was 15 years old when Lucille passed away in 1958 from liver illness. The lads were not allowed to attend the funeral by Al. He instead handed them liquor and said that this is the way guys cope with grief. Jimi began to find solace in music at about that time. He couldn't help but be captivated by it. He had a habit of bringing a broom to class and acting out guitar songs. A social worker took note and inquired as to whether the school might procure one for him, but her inquiry was unanswered. While assisting his dad with a house clearance in 1957, 15-year-old Jimi discovered a damaged ukulele with just 1 string. He was told he could keep it by the woman who lived there. Jimi picked up the instrument on his own, jamming out to Elvis Presley's music. Finally, after his mom passed away, Al went out and got a real guitar. He found solace in it. While he studied independently, he listened to early rock and blues music. In 1959, when he was 17 years old, he left Garfield High School. His entire life revolved on music. The Velvetones and the Rockin' Kings were among the local bands he was a member of. Money was always tight for him because he couldn't keep a job. He would occasionally sleep in abandoned automobiles, but he never stopped playing. He kept a tight eye on the other performers. Butch Snipes being one of them, he played guitar with his teeth, mimicked the gesture, and incorporated it into his performance. Riding in a stolen car led to Jimi's 1961 arrest at the age of 19. A week was his sentence. He had an option: become a soldier or checkmate. He joined the 101st Airborne Division after deciding to serve in the Army. Because of their stellar reputation, the Screaming Eagles drew Hendrix in. During WWIE, this division participated in the D-Day landings. His military education began at California's Fort Ord. He finished his training by August 1961 with the rank of private. The next step was to transfer him to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Hendrix had a tough time of it in the Army. Neither the structure nor the rules were to his liking. He expressed his distaste for military life in letters to his father. However, he persevered because of one thing: Betty Jean, the name he gave to his Red Dane electro guitar. Whenever he could, he would play it. Hendrix encountered Billy Cox, another soldier, at Fort Campbell. Cox gave a bass solo. They hit it off musically and quickly became fast friends. The King Casuals were their band name once they banded together. They began playing in and around the base, as well as in occasional neighboring towns. While serving his country, Hendrix was already planning for the future. He served for only 13 months in the Army in 1962. The official explanation was that he hurt his ankle while parachute jumping for the 26th time. Despite the Army's claims that he was no longer physically capable, other records indicate that he had performance issues. He slept through shifts, neglected to do bed checks, performed poorly in physical training, and shot poorly in shooting drills. At the time, his gay tendencies could have resulted in his dismissal, according to some stories. In spite of everything, Hendrix was discharged with honor. Moving to Clarksville, Tennessee, Hendrix and Billy Cox were discharged from the service. Their goal was to continue creating music. They continued to play in smaller venues under the moniker King Casuals. Hendrix started to establish his signature sound at this point. He was left-handed, therefore he played the guitar backwards. He also began to use his teeth and play tricks, such as playing behind his head. There was a lot of pressure to host an event. There was more to it than simply talent, Hendrix remarked. Hope to see a performance. You were not asked to return until you stood out. Not all of the band directors approved of his ostentatious performance style. Some even saw it as an attempt to steal the show. Still, Hendrix persisted in playing his act to the limit. As a backing guitarist, he was a fixture on the Chitlin Circuit from 1962 to 1965. Black musicians could perform at these locations in the South, Midwest, and East Coast, even though they were technically segregated. The weather was harsh. There was frequently little to no compensation. A fellow player named Bobby Rush mentioned that they would occasionally be paid with food. For Jimi Hendrix, the year was 1964. He had toiled away for years as an underdog, playing music for other artists, while they lived in the limelight and watching their every move. His desire for greater autonomy in his music and profession has grown. His choice was so made. After he moved into the Hotel Teresa in Harlem, he quit doing backing performances. Lithophane Pregon was someone he met there. They referred to her as Faye. She became his lover after becoming involved with the Harlem music scene. She did more than that. She provided him with shelter, encouraged him, and pushed him to continue. Arthur and Albert Allen were also people he met at about the same time. They had deep roots in Harlem's clubs, and they were twin brothers. In an effort to get recognition, Hendrix began performing around the city, playing in smaller venues and sitting in with other bands. At the Apollo Theater, he competed in the Amateur Night event in February 1964. He came out on top. He felt encouraged after that. It demonstrated his ability to command an audience solo. Shortly after that victory, he was able to secure an audition with Ronnie Isley, thanks to a connection he had in the Joe Tex band. After hearing Hendrix play, he offered him a position in the Isley Brothers' backup band. Instantly, he consented. It was a huge improvement. The first studio recording that Jimi Hendrix ever recorded was in March of 1964. Testimony was the name of the two-part single that the Isley Brothers were featured on. Despite being released in June, the song failed to chart. But that was a beginning. May saw him playing guitar on Don Covey's Mercy Mercy. After its August release, the song peaked at number 35 on Billboard's Hot 100. While Hendrix spent the majority of 1964 touring with the Isleys, he became bored with playing the same set every night by October. Leaving the band, he sought out new experiences. He became a member of Little Richard's touring band not long after that, the Pioneers. They went to Los Angeles in February 1965. You have no idea what you've got, but it's got me, a song that Hendrix and Little Richard recorded there. Don Covey wrote the song, VJ Records released it. Its peak chart position was number 92, where it remained for a single week. It was around that period when Little Richard's fame began to fade. Hendrix met vocalist Rosalie Brooks at the Wilcox Hotel in Hollywood. He was asked to contribute guitar to her track by her. One side was UT, while the other was My Diary. Arthur Lee penned both tunes. Hendrix met Lee during the recording and performed guitar on both tunes. They hit it off, and Hendrix ended up being a huge fan of Lee's band, Love. The first time Hendrix made an appearance on television was in July 1965. He was a member of Little Richard's band and sang backup vocals on the song Shotgun with Buddy and Stacy on Nashville's WLAC-TV's local show, Night Train. As far as anyone knows, that clip is Hendrix's first live performance video. However, Little Richard was a thorn in the side. Both of them were often bickering. On stage, Hendrix enjoyed strutting his stuff. He was irreconcilable with Richard's image due to his ostentatious fashion choices. Hendrix was let go from the band by Robert Richards' brother in the latter half of July. The first recording deal that Hendrix ever signed was on July 27, 1965. Copa, a management firm, and Juggy Murray of Sue Records were involved. Subsequently, he made a brief return to the Eisenhower and recorded an additional track. Having You Ever Been Disappointed served as the B-side, while Move Over and Let Me Dance were the main attractions. Meeting Curtis Knight at a motel was later that year for Hendrix. An R&B group known as The Squire was fronted by Knight. Hendrix spent 8 months with them. Hendrix had already inked a 2-year deal with Sue Record when he and Knight recorded How Would You Feel with Welcome Home on the B-side in October 1965. Furthermore, he inked a 3-year deal with an individual named Ed Chalpin on October 15, 1965. The relationship was short-lived, but the agreement was permanent. Hendrix ran into issues with it later on in his career. Hendrix collaborated with other musicians before, during, and after his time with Curtis Knight and the Squires. He was a member of Joey D and the Starlighters tour band. Along with King Curtis, he recorded. He contributed to Ray Sharp's single Help Me as well. There were 2 sections to that song. The year 1966 marked Hendrix's debut as a credited songwriter. He contributed instrumentals to 2 singles by Curtis Knight and the Squires, Hornet's Nest and Knock Your. By 1966, Hendrix had decided he wanted out of the R&B industry. He relocated to New York's Greenwich Village. A vibrant, creative energy pervaded the neighborhood. It was a haven for creative types, musicians, and fresh perspectives. Cafwa was Hendrix's first paying gig. Along MacDougal Street, Jimmy James and the Blue Flames was his new band. The band Spirit's future frontman, Randy California, was a member of this group. Across the Big Apple, the Blue Flames performed. Those performances were formative for Hendrix's sound. He began to test out different looks and stage antics. The band's final performances together were in September 1966 at Manhattan's Café Au Go Go. Backing up a singer named John Hammond was their gig at the time. Jimi Hendrix arrived at London Airport on September 24, 1966, with hardly any gear. Along with a guitar, a spare set of clothes, and $40 that he had borrowed, he also had hair curlers. The airport was recently rechristened ETHRO. Little did Hendrix know, this journey would alter the course of his life. He went by the stage name Jimmy James and played a few modest New York City gigs earlier that summer. Jimmy popped 9 Vesperac sleeping pills at some point thereafter. 18 times the usual dosage was used. The drug's potency led to its eventual ban in numerous nations. There was a period of illness for Hendrix just before he passed away. He probably had the flu and was completely worn out. The individuals in his life were also beginning to lose his trust. The music industry had him feeling confined, uncertain of what is ahead for him. His age was a mere 27.